Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, sisters, viewers and friends of Iqra TV. Welcome to part 2, the second part of my discussion today, Real Talk program, talking to Dr. Hadia Aslam, who is, if you've been watching the program, is an inspiration who I came across a few months ago. And when I heard her story and the work that she does, I was just completely bowled over that the dedication, the commitment and the effort that she puts in to try and help people who are extremely vulnerable, not just in Pakistan where she comes from, but in other parts of the world. She has worked across many areas, particularly in Pakistan, but also in France, in Greece, and in the border in Syria, refugees, Palestinian refugees, who we all know that all of them are living in some of the most atrocious conditions that we've seen throughout the world. And when I first met her, and she said that she spends 8 months of the year doing this work, although she is a GP in Bradford, based in Yorkshire. She works 4 months a year, and the rest of the year she dedicates going out to these countries and these places to try and provide some sort of support to people who are desperately in need of medical aid. So Hadia, we've heard your story so far, and you, as you say, you work 8 months of the year, you try and go out and do whatever you can. Now, this obviously takes not just physical effort on your part, but also resources, other resources. So how, do you fundraise yourself? Do you have other people who donate to you, or do they contribute in your work, or do they come out with you, etc.? How does this structure work for you?
All of the above.
All right.
Yeah, I utilize my own funds.
Right.
I have a very big network through the work that I've done because I've been doing it for so many years. And I think there are some donors who, of course, trust the work, so they will donate. Mm-hmm. People hear about our work. There are, fundraising pages that will be circulated. And there is so much barakah, there is so much blessing in our donations that a small amount will go a long way. Often the team that comes with me from the UK will not take a pay. We don't take a pay. So a lot of our...
So all this is fi sabilillah.
Yeah. So that those costs are not there, which means then that you're able to cover the costs of if you employ local people, the medication you're buying, the rent that you're paying for any structures that you're using, any equipment that you're buying, and if you're covering any specialist care for patients in the hospitals. So it works really well, actually. And
can I just interject there? Obviously you talked about you were there when the floods happened, which just virtually destroyed all the infrastructure in villages.
Yeah.
There are no houses left, nothing.
Nothing.
So these people have got sometimes not even food or clothes to wear or a shelter.
Yeah.
So how do you provide medical care in terms of equipment and medication? Do you take it with you?
Yeah. Yeah, right. There's a lot of meticulous planning involved when we're doing day-to-day clinics. When we're doing mobile medical clinics in places like these, we have to be really attentive, and that experience is there from myself. So I know, I have a rough idea of what is going to be presenting to us the next day. So we will take medication with us, we will take equipment with us, and we have an idea, we plan it in advance the day before usually. And of course then if we presented with cases that are significant that we can't cover, operations patients needing, or they're very sick, we'll arrange admission for them in hospitals through the contacts that we make, in reliable hospitals. Places like Pakistan, sadly, DI Khan, they have hospitals that are not delivering the service that they're there for. In fact, a lot of what's being delivered there is not real medicine. People are practicing, they've not been medically trained, and they're practicing on those people. We've seen some appalling cases where...
So these are people who don't have the qualifications
right.
or the experience who become doctors.
Right.
Rather, like some people here who do sort of plastic surgery or cosmetic surgery.
Yeah, it takes years of training to become a plastic surgeon. And we had a case where a patient was so much of his muscle, so much of his mass from the back, so when I say muscle mass, was removed just because he had some boils.
All right.
And that's what caused his death. The actual operation caused his death rather than those boils.
So obviously you're working in an area where the infrastructure is destroyed in some cases.
Yeah.
Right. And we all saw the effect of the floods in Pakistan, not just the last ones, but the ones before as well, and the earthquake.
Right.
Now in those circumstances, everybody wants to try and help out.
Right.
And understandably so.
Yeah.
And particularly people from Pakistani origin who live in places like Bradford and Birmingham, etc. They have their families there, they have a network there, they have their roots there, so they all want to do as much as they can and work and help as many people as they can. And they're all the charities and obviously pile into there quite rightly and quite understandably. But you have established major organizations in Pakistan. So for example, KEF, the Kashmir Education Fund, Read International,
Right.
and then the other one that I've come across, a very big and what looks like a very interesting, but not only interesting, but enormously successful health sector organization, which is called Indus Health.
Yeah.
Now, do you work with any of those, or do you work in partnership with them?
We can.
Right.
We can. Often the places that we end up working, there's not much presence from international organizations.
Right.
But we can, and we have worked with organizations. I've consulted for bigger organizations. I've been present, in MSF meetings. I've been working with the UNICEF in Pakistan when I was there in Dia Khan. I think there's collaboration opportunities where that you're going to be present in the same area and your focus is the same. Otherwise, you support each other in places that there is cross coverage.
No, because I had the fortune of attending the Indus fundraising event in Bradford a few months ago, and Dr. Barik Saab, who's started the thing. I mean, when I heard his sort of narrative of how he started, where he started, and the structure that has now built up in relation to Indus, I was totally amazed and taken back by it. I mean, it's turned into a massive charitable organization, and if even half of what they say they do, and I believe everything that they say they do, if even half of it sort of turns out to be, having an impact on the ground, then I'm sure, they would welcome working with you as well. So you work, I mean, they build hospitals and they provide clinics in various locations.
Fantastic.
Now, I don't know whether they are in Dera Ismail Khan area or not. I'm not from Pakistan. I don't know the geography of Pakistan. But they are, Read, for example, they do training, they do education training, KEF do education. So is your focus more on sort of on dual purpose?
Yeah.
One is to provide direct, immediate health care, but also to provide people who have the skills and the training to provide that support as moving forward.
We need to empower people.
Right.
That's the answer. And I've heard of Indus. I'm sure they've done some incredible work.
Yeah, we're going to be playing. Let's just show our viewers a short video of some of the work that you've been doing. Right.
Thank
you.
you.
That will give them a flavour of what you do. I mean, there's many videos, but we don't have the time to show all of them.
Go ahead.
So let's play those videos.
My name is Hadia Aslam. I'm a doctor. I'm a general medical doctor from the UK. I belong to the Pashto-speaking community from Attock in Pakistan, and I've lived between Pakistan and the UK for many years. I have a special interest in refugee health. I've worked in many refugee camps all over the world. I also have a special interest in disaster medicine as a result. I'm a consultant in the NGO sector. I've set up 2 medical and dental charities, one in Europe in the refugee camps and the other one in Lebanon. And I'm here today because I'm a consultant for this particular sector. So I'm offering my volunteering and my time to help develop a medical service for a group of volunteers here in Dera Ismail Khan. Pakistan mein jo bhi situation hai, for me it's the worst situation that I've seen for a community overall. ठीक है, इसका मतलब ये है कि जो पाकिस्तान की सैलाब से पहले जो पाकिस्तानियों के हालात थे यहाँ पे जहाँ पे हम सर्व कर रहे हैं इस वक्त, they were probably very bad to start with, और सैलाब की वजह से they've gotten much worse. So this is something to consider for a lot of us. जब हम address करते हैं इस problem को, हमें ये बात दिमाग में रख लेनी चाहिए कि सैलाब से पहले पाकिस्तानियों का हाल काफ़ी बुरा था, ख़ासकर वो इलाके जो affect हुए हैं. जो औरतें हैं यहाँ की ladies हैं, they're very vulnerable anyway in a society, unfortunately, like Pakistan. So it becomes extremely worse when their homes are taken away from them, because those are their safe spaces. Those have been taken away from them as a result of the flooding, so they've become extra vulnerable, so more vulnerable than they were before the floods came. मुझे एक चीज़ जो मेरे लिए काफ़ी यूज़फुल रही है वो है फेसबुक. जो नेटवर्किंग हुई है फेसबुक के थ्रू. मुझे जब पाकिस्तान में सैलाब का पता चला, जब न्यूज़ रिपोर्ट्स मैंने देखी हैं, पाकिस्तान में जो सिचुएशन थी तो वो ऑटोमेटिकली एक दिल में एक डिज़ायर आई कि आई नीड टू बी इन पाकिस्तान, आई नीड टू बी देयर. आई वर्कड इन अदर कंट्रीज, आई वर्कड इन यूरोप, इन द मिडल ईस्ट, आई नीड टू बी इन पाकिस्तान राइट नाउ. तो वो तो प्लान करना नहीं पड़ा, it just happened. Facebook के through, I contacted a few people that I knew. They've put me in touch with some independent volunteers in the grassroots sector here in Dera Ismail Khan, because there are many areas that have not been covered by relief efforts in Dera Ismail Khan. There is a very big need, so that's why I decided to come here. The situation in Pakistan before the floods was pretty dire. It was pretty extreme. This means that when the relief efforts for the floods stop, the situation in Pakistan will continue in that manner before what we had before the floods. It will stay the same. Obviously, the floods will have made the problems worse and the healthcare needs will have become extreme by that stage. So I think it's necessary that we continue with our efforts. After I leave, when I go back to England, my plan is to continue with the medical efforts by employing a team here and providing the healthcare in a mobile fashion to different areas, different villages in Dera Ismail Khan and possibly beyond. मैंने पाकिस्तान में पढ़ा है. I've been to one of the Pakistani Air Force schools in Kamra.
I hope you've seen that the short video, and you've seen the devastation that was caused by the floods and the area where Dr. Hadia and her colleagues were working. You can tell from what you've seen that those areas are extremely vulnerable. Those areas have some of the highest poverty and possibly the worst medical conditions that people are living under. And that is the area in which Hadia and her colleagues put enormous amount of effort and energy to trying to help those who require this medical support. So Hadia, we saw the areas that you're working in. I presume those are the areas that you're familiar with. And we saw some of your colleagues there as well, right? Now, obviously, it's a very traditional, from what I've gathered, it's a very traditional area, right? Where, both in terms of culture and faith and religion as well. So how do they, accept you as a female coming from outside, although you're a Pakistani, you speak Pashto, how do they sort of relate to you? Because we know in the past some people have sort of shunned people who go in there.
Right.
Because they see them, oh, you to hame kafir bana denge.
Right.
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 That's the idea. It's a very big thing in some parts of the world.
Yeah. So what you're referring to is the mistrust in the NGOs, international NGOs that Pakistanis have. If you ask me, Pakistan has a very complex sort of geopolitical terrain. So we have, of course, we have the sectarianism in Diyai Khan, sadly, between the Shia and the Sunni communities, which some would blame the establishment for because we didn't have it 30 years ago. We have a very, very difficult military presence in Diyai Khan. We have a very difficult police system there, a very challenged police system there. There's poverty that has lasted for generations. There's malnourishment. And there's a lot of internally displaced people, but also a very big refugee community. And you're right, how was I perceived when I arrived? Because I'm from the UK. But I have lived in Pakistan and I have been exposed to these types of communities. And through my work in very difficult refugee camps, where it's been unsafe for me personally, and I've come across some life-threatening scenarios for myself in the work that I've done. It's not rare for a lot of us. It's quite common, actually.
What, you've been threatened physically? And
yes, the death threats are there. It's not uncommon. I've had to face armed people.
What's the purpose behind it? What's the reason behind the death threats?
So let me give you an example. Let's take Dera Ismail Khan, for example. We have had militant activity where we work, and it's been unsafe for our colleagues to work, for our local colleagues to work, and especially somebody like me who's from the UK, there's always a threat of kidnap. So you have to navigate those sensitivities as well. You have to work with the military because they give you that information. In a place like Dunkirk and Calais, when I was working in France, the smugglers there, they actually have guns. And if you upset them, because they're running those camps, if you upset them, they will hold the gun in your face. And that's happened to me while I've been there. Not that I've upset them, but the people that I took, who were a dental team, who were another organization, they did something without realizing to upset the smugglers. who then held a gun to us and there was a confrontation.
Oh my goodness.
So these things are very common. But coming back to your question, sorry, you asked me about
How they perceive you and how they
perceive.
welcome you, yeah.
There is always a sense of mistrust, but I think trust comes with communication. If you can speak the language, if you can understand their problems, if you can show empathy, if you're present, if you're there, if you're in the same space that they are in rather than in a different space altogether, of course they're going to develop a sense of trust with you.
Do the military and the police, do they not feel threatened by your presence because you're giving the local people something that they desperately need, who previously they had to rely on these institutional organizations?
Yeah, I'm looking at the name of your program and it's Real Talk, so let's be real. These countries are suffering because of the corruption in these entities, in these places. So of course there is a threat from people like me. And when I go in there, I'm also exposing myself to that threat
of course you are,
from them. Because I could easily be put away, not allowed in, and the military, they were very shocked that I turned up. They said we didn't have any information that you were coming, which means that they have information about everybody who enters the Diyai Khan area for a reason. There's that sensitivity associated with it. I think it's about communication. I think it's about showing them you're not a threat.
So do you have to let them know in advance that you're going to be coming?
Yeah.
Are you part of an international group, or are you sort of a local sort of charitable organization that does this work?
I've set up 2 medical and dental charities. One's been working in the Middle East, the other one's been working in Europe, and they were present in Pakistan with me. But my platform is called...
So what are these charities called?
One's Health Point Foundation, the one that supported us in Pakistan, the one that supported us in Syria.
So it's the Health Point Foundation.
Right.
I was just wondering, because if anybody wants to
Sure.
look it up, maybe they want to contribute.
They're amazing.
So
they're an amazing group of women.
Right.
They're my friends and my colleagues. My organization's called disastermedicineanddentistry.com. You can go online and we're developing that platform. And one of the focuses of that platform, which is where my exclusive efforts are right now, is to be able to develop sustainable solutions, to be able to go into countries like Somalia, to be able to go into countries like Pakistan, to be able to go into countries like Malawi you were talking about, and come up and work with those authorities who can support you and you can support them, and you can come up with a longer term sustainable solution. Because let's be clear, the solution is not charity, it's not dependence. We need to be able to empower these communities. We need to be able to educate them, train them, and support them in making their own change. That's the answer.
That is something that everybody would like to see happen, and I certainly would like to see happen. But sometimes the difficulty is that you provide the opportunity to train somebody locally. They become nurses or qualified medical professionals or a GP, and then they leave their communities and go somewhere else to earn money, which is understandable to a certain extent, because they want to try and improve the lives of the family members back home. How do you retain people in places like that? Not everybody as altruistic as you, who says, I want to give my life, dedicate my life to the service of my fellow human beings.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, what you're asking. Look at Lebanon, what's happening to Lebanon. The Lebanese would refuse to leave Lebanon. I have friends who are young Lebanese professionals who said, 5 years ago when I was there, they said, we're not leaving Lebanon. It doesn't matter what happens, we're not leaving. But that bomb blast that happened in Beirut only when we had the pandemic in 2019, that actually drove a lot of very loyal Lebanese people to leave the country. And that's happening in Pakistan, that's happening in Africa, it's happening in the Middle East, it's happening in Syria. And I'm afraid I don't have the answer. How do you stop people from leaving their country? I don't know. Because the truth is, those who leave do not want to leave. And this whole hatred that there is in the West against refugees, asylum seekers, or unaccompanied minors, these children who are coming into our country, and sadly a political notion that's been driven against these people, it's really heartbreaking, because you have witnessed the sacrifices, or we witness the sacrifices these people make when they leave their home. Nobody wants to leave home. Do you want to leave home?
Yeah, that's true.
Do I want to leave home? Nobody wants to leave home. Put their child on that boat that's probably going to sink, and leave with that child, the comfort of the community.
Risks, aren't they?
The community that they know, the structure that they know, the languages that they speak, the home that they know, the family that they know, the village that they know, that's helping them bring up their families. I think it's and there is there is also, and we have to challenge this, within the Muslim community, there is that sense of other. We're seeking refuge from something as well. My grandfather came to the UK, he was seeking refuge from poverty when I came to England. You came when, or your fathers came when here. I think when we start othering people, problems arise, whether it's a Muslim against a non-Muslim, whether it's a white person against a black person, or the other way around.
I mean, you've raised a very important issue here as a Muslim, you know, the word Muslim. We as Muslims, following the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ and following the guidance from Allah that came through the Quran, we are supposed to be the custodians of our fellow human beings. And yet, in my view, we have miserably failed to a large extent.
Agreed.
Now, what would you say, particularly not just to the people of Pakistan who live in this country, but others as well? That, you know, particularly people from Pakistan, and I know that the Pakistani community is extremely generous.
Right.
When there's tragedies in Pakistan, I have worked with lots of my Pakistani colleagues to raise lots of money to send it back to Pakistan. Now, that happens every time there's a tragedy.
Right.
Now, as a professional, as a medical professional, and I've mentioned some of these organizations like Indus and Reed and KEF, they're all putting in a lot of energy and effort.
Yeah.
What are the key issues, in your opinion, that needs to be now looked at? It's not just parachuting in, doing a little bit of work while the tragedy has happened, and then moving out. Is it what you talked about earlier, training the trainers, building the infrastructure in their own communities, in their own countries?
I think if you're talking about Pakistan specifically and the areas that I've worked in, the lack of education amongst women.
Right.
We have to be honest, and we have to be direct. 52% of Pakistanis are women who are living in Pakistan. What percentage of those are educated? You educate a woman, you educate a nation.
Right.
That is the reality, and you see the impact of this. These constraints that women are living in, sadly, where they are they are actually serving, sadly, the community,
But
the
that's
men.
part of the culture, isn't it?
Right, but we have to challenge that, because you're asking me what the key problems
Yeah,
are.
no, I agree. Yeah.
That is one of the key
Yeah,
problems in
I
Pakistan.
agree.
Second is the lack of understanding of Islam. Of course, Pakistanis are generous. I mean, they're one of the most generous nations that I
Yes,
know.
they are.
And
Yeah, they are.
my friends, my colleagues, Bradford is full of generous people and businesses, incredible businesses that exist here, and they've benefited a lot of the work that I've done. We're not targeting people's generosity. We're talking about, do you want a long-term solution? Face the demons that we are. You know, there are elephants in the room that we don't discuss as a nation. Me, I don't wear a headscarf. If I was to sit in a place trying to discuss Islam, I would probably be discouraged, because I don't look like a Muslim. I don't dress like a Muslim. So, you know, we have bigger problems, I think, as a nation. And if you want to solve the misery that we're enduring, I think we have to really address those very key values as a community.
And do you think that discussion is now taking place in places in Pakistan, or are we still a long way away from that?
A long way away, but the discussions have started.
Have they started?
I think so.
Right.
I think so. I think there are some people, especially in the UK, who are creating some phenomenal places to talk about your trauma, to talk about the trauma that you're carrying. And it's okay to talk about your issues as a man or as a woman. It's okay to say that this culture that I'm carrying on my shoulders is actually draining me, and I can't focus on the progress and the development of my family. You know, it's okay to say these things.
And is that change? I mean, we've seen in this country, for example, if we look at the statistics at this moment in time, the number of Pakistani young girls and women who are coming out with incredibly good qualifications, doing some amazing work in not just the city, but in the medicine, and all sorts of fields, is phenomenal compared to some of the other communities as well, including the Indian community, which until a few years ago was ahead, but the Pakistani community has overtaken that. But is that similar things happening in Pakistan, back home in Pakistan, or not?
No.
So it's not happening there?
No, of course our girls are trying harder. If you look at Bradford as an example, when I was growing up, of course my situation was different at home, because in my family you get married at 15. But I see around Bradford it's still happening, where girls stay at home and they help mum with the cooking, with the cleaning, the wash up. And the sons are allowed to go and stay on the streets until 10, 11, 12 o'clock. I'm not criticizing the way people are bringing up their children, but I'm saying that girl becomes so much more responsible than that boy. So where's the difference? It's the lack of discipline, and this we're so what's the word, lenient with our male child.
And we have huge issues with our boys as well. I mean,
And we're having, but it's a disservice, Iqbal.
I agree with you. Some of the
Right.
challenges with the boys.
And when are we going to talk about these things?
I know your colleague and your friend Inaya
Right.
does campaign around some of these issues, and she's been on my program
Yeah.
about the way some of our Pakistani young men behave and the impact that's
But you know
having.
what's most difficult, though? I'm
I mean,
sorry
we're-
to interrupt
We're
you.
running out of time.
Yeah, it's difficult.
But this is a discussion that I think we need to have.
Right.
And I've had this discussion with Maulana Fazal Dad at one point about what do we need to do in our community, especially with our young men who are getting involved into all sorts of nefarious activities. Hadia, thank you for coming.
Thank you. For
I mean, we could carry on for a long time.
Yeah, I agree.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time. I hope you found this today's program interesting. Raised some very interesting and challenging questions. And I think, as Hadia says, there's an elephant in the room that we need to address, all of us, whether you're an imam or a professional. Hopefully, we'll discuss this another time. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah protect you and be with you. And inshallah, I'll see you next week.
Thank you.